Jeffrey Robichaud. I'm one of the bar pilots with the Associated Branch Pilots. Right now we are in the Mississippi River alongside Venice, Louisiana. This is 11 and a half miles or so above Head of Passes on the right descending bank, which is the west bank. Being 11 and a half miles above Head of Passes, we are 31 and a half miles from the Gulf of Mexico if we follow the river on down.
Okay. And of course, our big question is, how did you're very young looking, I don't know, maybe in your 30s, I suspect. And how did you happen to end up being a river pilot? Is it something you wanted to do as a kid?
I started wanting to become a pilot, specifically a bar pilot, when I was about 16 years old. I'm 36 now. My family does have a history on the water, although we were not in the pilots. I grew up deckhanding and eventually serving as captain on some family charter fishing boats that went out of Empire, Louisiana, which is about 20 miles up from here. So we spent time anchored at the mouth of the river, usually at the end of our day fishing, and I would see the ships coming and going, coming in and out of the mouth of the river. So my family members knew some guys that were pilots, and eventually I found out some other people I knew that were pilots and asked questions and decided to pursue it. So the progression from being a deckhand on a charter boat to where I am now, after asking some questions, I found out there were some maritime academies in the country, and I pursued my secondary education at Texas A&M University Galveston. Have a degree in marine transportation, and upon graduating I had a third mate's license, which it's third mate on vessels of any gross tons upon oceans. So I went to work. I took a couple jobs on small boats here in the Gulf of Mexico, oil field boats, and then running crew boats in the river. In fact, running these boats for the bar pilots, which is how I got to know all of these guys, and they all got to know me.
Right.
And when I felt like that process was, the meet and greet was done, I went to work on my license on ships. So I took a couple jobs, different types of ships, and then when I became eligible to be a pilot, which the eligibility requirements are, you have to be a resident here, which I was, and have a year of sea time on a ship, and a 4-year college degree. So once I met those requirements, I started applying. 5 years and 5 applications later, and one failed attempt in an election, and eventually, right after Hurricane Katrina, I got enough votes to be, allowed into the apprenticeship program. And I was an apprentice. Me and the guys that came in with me, we were apprentices for 2.5 years, and became pilot in 2008.
And probably the next question is, what exactly does a pilot do?
Okay.
If it can be described.
It can be. Pilots, the short answer is we get on the ship and bring them into the river that we're familiar with, that they are presumably unfamiliar with. Now, to go a little bit more in depth, we're required to go on board. The United States government and most governments throughout the world have a system in place that dictate how and where pilots have to be used on ships. Here in the Mississippi River, any vessel that is registered in another country, or any vessel over 100 gross tons that is coming from another country, has to hire a state commissioned pilot.
Okay.
Now, that's what we are. We have licenses from the Coast Guard, a federal license, but we also work under the permission of the governor of Louisiana to serve as his agent. So we, bar pilots specifically, we go out when a ship is coming inbound, we go out to that ship and use one of these boats, pull up alongside the ship, climb up a rope ladder, and then go into the wheelhouse and have an exchange of information with the captain. He tells us about his ship, we tell him about our river. Traffic conditions, current conditions, weather, whatnot. At that point, we serve as an advisor to him and his crew to move his vessel safely through this channel. That entails giving direct commands to whoever's steering the ship, giving courses, giving direct rudder commands to maneuver that ship, dictating the speed of the ship so that we don't damage any other vessels that are working in the area, or create bad traffic situations with other vessels moving around. We also handle the communications between the vessel that we're on and the other vessels moving around in the area. Most of these ships coming here, their first language is not English.
I was going to ask about
it
that
could be
next.
They could either be Indians or Greeks or Filipinos, Chinese. They don't speak full English, and most of the guys that are running these small boats in the area don't speak proper English either. So we're basically a translator, to make sure that everybody out here can coexist safely and do what they're trying to do. So we're handling radio communications as well as directing the motions or the movements of the ship that we're on.
All right. Here's another question from two northerners who are used to a Mississippi River about how wide? 50 feet wide at the start.
10 feet wide.
Anyway, where we canoe a lot, and I know you've been talking about seeing various groups of canoers coming down to this part of the river. And what sort of advice would you give those people if they choose to come this far?
Advice for canoers to come this far.
Who come this far?
It was, I would say, one, be very alert, be very aware of what's happening ahead and astern of you. By the time that someone on a ship sees you, more than likely it's too late for them to do much. It's ship's 1,000 feet long and piloting from a spot 100 feet above the water. By the time he sees a canoer, he can't slow it down a whole lot. So I would say be very aware of your surroundings. Be ready for anything.
Yeah.
Try to stay as far away from the middle. Stay as close to the bank as possible, and make yourself visible.
Right. Well, I just can't imagine anybody in a canoe trying to paddle out in the middle. I just assume they'd.
It happens.
Really? I just